This is a speech I'm doing for my comms class about the topic of the reauthorization of FISA Section 702 and more broadly the topic of government surveillance in general. I thought I would upload it to YouTube just in case anyone was curious. The Fourth Amendment of the United States states that no American shall be subject to unreasonable search or seizure. Searches require a warrant, and warrants require a probable cause. This shared value of the American people was largely ignored by the NSA through its surveillance programs. Audience analysis revealed that 14 of you knew nothing about these NSA programs, and 7 of you knew very little. Today we'll discuss the legislation behind those NSA programs and how we know they exist. I hope that by the end everyone will have a better understanding of the importance of the topic of government surveillance. So, what does the government do and what legislation backs it up? Perhaps the most impactful of all the legislation backing NSA surveillance is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, specifically Section 702 of that act. There are multiple pieces of legislation that back up NSA surveillance, but FISA is the backing behind the two biggest NSA programs, and those are PRISM and Uplink. This is a document written by someone who was advocating for the piece of legislation to House members, and they noted that Section 702 has been a key instrument in U.S. counterterrorism efforts, and that it is heavily and carefully overseen. Uplink, what is Uplink? Uplink allows the government to mass collect data and analyze all internet traffic that enters and exits the United States without needing a warrant. So this means all it takes for one's data to be collected by the NSA is for any piece of data to be transferred to a server outside the United States. This can even come to the extreme of, let's say, you send an email to someone in the United States when you're in the United States. That could be collected because all it takes is for your email to end up on a server outside the United States. Gmail has servers outside the United States, so if I send an email through Gmail to somebody, it could end up in a server outside the United States, which then would end up in an NSA bulk collected data facility. This program has been recently scaled back after the program violated the rules set by the FISA court, which means its own regulatory body scaled it back because it was breaking its own rules. The second program is called PRISM. PRISM allows the government to tap into the data collections of tech companies, i.e. Google, Microsoft, Apple, and take what they want without needing a warrant. Common theme, without a warrant. This means they can take emails, voice chats, text, photos, and other kinds of data that are stored on the servers of tech companies. Tech companies, funny enough, at the time, denied involvement in the program and claimed that they did not know it was occurring. This is a slide directly from the NSA that was leaked back in 2013, and it shows that Microsoft was inducted into this PRISM program back in 2007, and as of the most recent tech company added as of 2013 when it was leaked was Apple in 2012. This is another slide directly from the same source, from the same leak, that described how Microsoft, Google, Yahoo, you can collect all those datas, all the data from those sources rather, and take their email, take their chat, video, voice, whatever it be, videos, photos, even file transfers they could take. So now that you know what happens, it is important to know how we know that it happens. And we know that it happens because of a guy named Edward Snowden. In June 2013, Snowden leaked information to journalists regarding the NSA programs I just described and other things. This caused mixed reactions. Some saw him as a traitor, some saw him as a hero. Those who saw him as a traitor claimed that the info he leaked was damaging to U.S. national security. A common example of this is the New York Times, one of the sources that he leaked the information to, failed to properly redact a piece of U.S. military strategy. At the time, it was in Mosul, and the United States was fighting ISIS. So maybe not damaging to national security, but certainly damaging to U.S. military efforts. On the flip side, some saw him as a hero. Some argued that he revealed information that every citizen deserved to know, and doing that very well could have cost him his life, if at the very least his freedom. So why is this relevant today? What happened in the last 6 months that prompted me to give this event speech? Well, the event is the reauthorization of the legislation that we discussed earlier, FISA Section 702. In early January, Congress voted to reauthorize that piece of legislation. It passed the House very handily with both Democratic and Republican majority and minority leaders respectively, voting yes, and in the Senate, 18 Democratic senators voted yes, with only 6 Republicans voting no. So what is the impact? What is the impact of this vote? The impact is that it continues the long-established status quo of government surveillance that began when the Patriot Act was passed after 9/11. The difference now is that we know what is happening behind the scenes of the NSA, something that we could not say before Snowden leaked. I hope that this presentation has been educational regarding the surveillance actions of the United States, how we know about them, and why the topic is relevant now. So what should the response be? What should we do in response to having this information? Should we revert back to the old methods of communication to avoid being spied on? Should we stop using the internet entirely? When Edward Snowden was asked this very question in an interview, he gave this answer. You shouldn't change your behavior because a government agency somewhere is doing the wrong thing. If you sacrifice your values because you're afraid, you don't care about those values very much. If you want the more comical context behind that quote, I would recommend visiting John Oliver's YouTube channel and watching the full interview with Snowden. Thank you for listening.